You're listening to episode 33 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the podcast and website for modern, secular application of early Buddhist thought. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the companion website has show notes for each episode, along with resource materials on Buddhism, critical thinking, science, secularism, and skeptical thought. Though the podcast focuses on core practice from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Theo Koffler joins us to speak about Between Four Eyes, a collaborative for teaching mindful awareness and social emotional intelligence to educators, parents, students, and healthcare providers. How many of us have found remarkable value in the practice of mindfulness? It helps us be more aware, see things as they are, and make better decisions. But how many of us have had the benefit of formal education, say at the high school level, that's taught us how to develop this invaluable skill? Sadly, most of us come to this completely independent of our school system. If we learn it, it's from books, which means no direct guidance from a teacher, or at a local Buddhist temple, which means having to participate in religious practices with which we may be uncomfortable. There are few resources for those who want to get an education in mindfulness in a more formal way for their children. Toronto-born, Theo Koffler is founder and teacher of Between Four Eyes, a collaborative for teaching mindful awareness and social emotional intelligence to educators, parents, students, and healthcare providers. In the late 1970s, she, together with her father and brother, founded Superfarm Israel Limited, Israel's national drugstore chain. She developed therapeutic riding for the disabled in Israel in 2008, launched therapeutic riding for the disabled in Jericho as an Israeli-Arab cross-border initiative. Mother of two children, writer, teacher, and peace activist, Theo started an online community called Mindfulness Without Borders, for those students from around the globe interested in sharing best practices on mindful living. She serves on the board for the Han Foundation and Connecting for Change, and is an advisor for the Inner Kids Foundation. So sit back, relax, and have a nice rose tea. And we are here with Theo Koffler. Theo, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be heard.
So tell me a little bit about your background in mindfulness practice and how you came to have a Buddhist practice.
Sure. Well, I went through a very interesting personal health challenge years ago. I gave birth to my second son. I have two boys. And I got something called lupus, which is an autoimmune deficiency disorder. And it radically changed my life. It really was from one day to the next. I was a totally different person from who I recognized the day before. I went from being vital, very engaged in community. I had a business career. I was developing a chain of drugstores in Israel. My brother Leon. And so I was in the prime of my formative business years, and I got lupus. And the next day after giving birth to my second son, I was almost incapable of doing anything. Really, I compared myself to a wet rag on the floor, which was, generally is really hard to pick up because the rag is so wet with water and heavy. And I really, because of that, because of my lupus, life changed. And at the time I was living in Israel, and there was really no Western medicine to help mitigate the conditions of my disease. And so in time, I went off all of the traditional Western medicine, and I started looking to Eastern spiritual philosophy, thus entered my Buddhist practice. I looked to alternative forms of healing, like using more holistic ways for healing, like aromatherapy and homeopathic remedies, shiatsu, and I went on a macrobiotic diet, which with all those various layers began to help fortify my condition, strengthen my well-being, and in turn help me connect inward to what was going on within me and reinforce that connection so that I could move out of this the very weak and debilitating condition and into a better sense of well-being. And it was a very, very slow process, but one that with time and over about 8 years was fortifying. And I can really say now, almost 25 years later, although it's been a long run, that I've really enjoyed all the alternative practices to get to the place where I am today, which is really, I'm feeling 90% healthy.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what brought you this is what many of us come to this practice with, is some form of suffering, something where our existing coping mechanisms just aren't quite covering it.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So in particular, I living in Israel, although there's an amazing community of Vipassana teachers and a very live and vibrant Dharma communities around the country, at that time in the early 80s, there wasn't really the availability of teachers as there are or were in the West. And with for me, I came to San Francisco with my husband at the time, and here it was like the nexus of that type of
as we were speaking, yes.
community activity, and Spirit Rock became like a home, and wonderful Vipassana teachers like Sylvia Burstein and Jack Cornfield and Sharon Salzberg really became my models to a new way of thinking and a new way of being that was really, really tremendously empowering for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell us about Between Four Eyes. What is the organization and what led you to start it?
Sure. Well, Between Four Eyes is the name of my foundation, which I founded in 2007. And basically, as we really believe that conflict between individuals and communities can be diminished by teaching, mindfulness-based skills and a set of social emotional skills that help increase self-awareness and social awareness and the types of critical thinking skills that one needs to lead a ethical, integral, and engaged life. So coming out of Israel and living in a country of conflict, it was the us and them paradigm that I really thought and saw and witnessed that perpetuated violence. And I felt, as long as this world continues to marginalize people and populations as us and them, that we would never come together as individuals and recognize the common humanity that we share, mm-hmm. and find ways to move out of violence and build peace and build communities. So Between Four Eyes is that the metaphor behind that is somewhere between your eyes and mine, there is a field of our common humanity where, with respect for our differences, tolerance, understanding of multiple perspectives, that there's a way for peace building between two people.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting that you mentioned critical thinking is part of this, because that's near and dear to the people who are listening to the podcast. And I've done an interview with Linda Elder, who's one of the folks who's written several books on critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And it helps. What we found, and particularly what you're talking about, is we don't want this practice, this mindfulness practice, to be just simple awareness, but also taking that awareness and what you're getting out of it in that clearer sight, and then using one's critical thinking and using one's right heart in that kind of positive growth that you're seeing, removing the us-them barriers. But you need some thought behind how to do that properly and to understand where the other person's coming from.
I couldn't be more in accord with you. I mean, if we as individuals are look to ourselves to be the stewards for positive change, then we have to be accountable in shaping a safe and just and sustainable world. And in order to do that, just as you said, we need to have those kinds of skills and capacities to steward that change and let that change be different from yesterday and the day before. And so what we're teaching really is what we'd like to say is that we're actually facilitating workshops, and that we are seeding conversations and providing universal life skills that will help individuals develop as ethical and accountable and engaged global citizens. So, in countries of conflict, which is where we started, those skills are not available. They're not taught. Families often, because of war, don't have parents as head of households. They have, there's so many orphans, and in turn, especially in communities of conflict or post-conflict, such as Rwanda, where we have our programs, their models often are corrupt. And so these youth are looking up to models that are perpetuating violence and forgetting to look within. And so that's the premise of our work.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've really keyed in very much so on the idea that we need to teach these skills, a couple of different skills, one very important one being mindfulness, so that we even notice this difference we have and this separation of us and them. And then also teaching the skills to correct that. There's critical thinking comes in with that. And it sounds like you've also really honed in on the idea that we need to do this with a younger generation so that they can grow and propagate these skills as they get older and have their own children.
Exactly. Do you know, when we started, we were facilitating workshops with healthcare providers, community leaders, and professionals. And it came to us that, especially in marginalized communities, that we really should pay attention to the high school youth that were in transition and really catch them before they entered their adult lives and would potentially miss the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations. And that, in fact, if we could reach out to and create programs for high school students, that we could teach them a way of being through mindful living as a way to navigate through some of their harsh realities that come with living in conflict and post-conflict environments. Mm-hmm.
Now tell us a little bit about the Mindfulness Ambassador Council Guidebook. One of the things I want to mention to people listening to the podcast is the website for Between Four Eyes is linked on the Secular Buddhist page for this episode, but the address, if you want to go there directly, is www.btwn, the number 4, EYES.org, betweenfoureyes.org. Tell us about the Mindfulness Ambassador Council Guidebook.
Yes. Well, the guidebook that you can get a sample of our lessons is our teaching curriculum that each student receives as part of our Mindfulness Ambassador Council. And basically, this council is an after-school initiative for high school students that explores the practices of mindful awareness and social emotional learning. And again, we really feel that by seeding these conversations, we're helping them find ways to a way of thinking that will address their personal transformation from the inside out. And in time, as we ask them to be ambassadors for mindful living, that they will take what resonates with them out to their communities, back to their families, into their schools, and be ambassadors for change. So the sampler that's on the website gives anyone the opportunity to look at our content, the style in which we conduct these meetings, which is the way of counsel. And this counsel method of instruction is so unique because there's no hierarchy in counsel. Each and every individual is equal, and we sit in a circle. There's an exchange of ideas and collaborative learning that takes place within the group. And we, as facilitators, believe that our role is to seed the theme, to ask the right questions, and to create a safe place for shared learning where students can share their insights, because we believe the wisdom's already in the room. So the guidebook is really something to for each student to own and have as their own, and feel a sense of proprietorship over this new language, this new conversation, because we started in Africa, and although right now we're contextualizing our African addition to American and Canadian thought, in African schools, they don't have really textbooks and notebooks and journals, and we offer both. We give journals, we give guidebooks as for the instructional teaching, and even pens.
And that's what you're touching on, I think, is that having that sense of ownership, of personal engagement with the learning, that they can make positive change, is one of the things you're really helping to foster.
Absolutely. Do you know, we really recognize that the students that we teach, they want to be engaged citizens. They want to be stewards for change. They just haven't, their youth wisdom hasn't been valued in some of the, or as, so I shouldn't be so general in saying it hasn't been valued, but until recently, youth wisdom has not been valued. And just now, governments are engaging the youth to be involved in community. And in fact, because of that, we put in a hands-on learning experience for the students to engage in community activity through a volunteer project. We actually started an online blog, so mindfulness ambassadors from all over the world that have taken this program can share their thoughts and ideas and participate on online discussions. So, just by exposing these students to other narratives and to be able to communicate across cultures and across boundaries adds to their perspectives and their appreciation of, the interconnection and the interconnectivity of people.
Well, I imagine in watching these, your students and the people who are participating in the program as teachers, you have a lot of very rewarding activities and things that you're seeing as the students are growing and as the faculty is growing. What are you finding is the most rewarding to you about this work? And are there any particular stories you'd like to share?
Well, I think what's most particularly rewarding is just being present and teaching mindfulness in countries that otherwise would not have the opportunity for this conversation. Mm-hmm. So we're a teaching team of 7 teachers internationally, and they all come with a mindfulness practice, and they all have various talents as practitioners or artists or, and a deep contemplative practice. And what's so exciting is to hear the people that have been part of our workshops tell us after 5 days how they've been transformed, how they never saw that their own inner talents. They never felt that that others were interested. There's like endless testimonials that I have of teachers that we taught from Teachers Without Borders that said, I allowed my life and the war that I've been part of and the conflict and the violence to shape who I am. And I really didn't know how to let go of those old stories and just live in the moment. And that's been liberating for so many. And I think that's what touches me the most, that people have been liberated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
now, for folks listening to this podcast, I know you mentioned there is an online community, and I think that's called Mindfulness Without Borders.
That's right.
And that is linked on your website. And what are some other ways that people can help, and how can people get involved?
Well, right now we're launching our Mindfulness Ambassador Councils in the States and in Canada. We're doing a 2-year pilot, and in starting this summer, for those that are educators or mindfulness practitioners and are maybe interested in teaching this counsel practice in their communities or in their local high schools, we will be offering a webinar and a teacher training and a facilitators training commencing this summer. So if they stay posted to our website, we will be announcing our plans by the spring of the new year, because we're hoping in September 2011 that our first body of facilitators will have taken the webinar course and that they will be actively engaging in this program in schools. For all those people out in your world that are interested in supporting Between Four Eyes and the work that we're doing in the world, of course, any small donation would be, is something that we are deeply grateful for, because all the generous support of our and the philanthropy that people are willing to offer goes straight into the on ground. So it goes straight to the schools that we're doing. It's not used for administration and operational expenses. It goes straight to the schools. So if you're interested to support a school, well, we'd love to take that interest and make it work on the ground. I don't know if I mentioned, but we're in Nigeria, in Rwanda, and in California and Toronto, Canada so far.
Mm-hmm. So far, but growing, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're actually at a great juncture in our short history. We're now developing major stakeholder relationships with like-minded organizations that, with their human and financial resources, will help us thoughtfully expand our programs. And so that's a very exciting piece. So we're in conversations with United Way and YMCA and with Ojai Foundation and with a few others. And these conversations in time unfold to, we're hoping, healthy relationships that will help us sustain this work for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have a newsletter as well. How can people sign up for that?
Sure. Well, I should mention that we're in the end of October going to launch our foundation under the name of Mindfulness Without Borders, because I think that name translates across cultures and says what we're doing a little easier than the name of Between Four Eyes. And on the website, when we launch, we will be launching with the newsletter, and it will say on the home page that you can sign up to this newsletter by just giving us your approval in the email. And presently on the Between Four Eyes website, you could do the same.
Okay. I think what we'll do is on the Facebook fan page for the Secular Buddhist podcast is when you do have that changeover to the new website, we'll be posting it there for people to see when it happens, and also when the events are advertised. Certainly we can post that on the Facebook fan page as well.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And, I would be equally delighted to share your podcasts or any news that you have. We'll have a resource page, and whatever we can do to help get your work out into the world, Ted, would be a privilege and an honor.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, Theo, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up for today?
Well, no, I'm just so grateful, and I just know that for all your listeners that for those that are new to mindfulness, it's really just a way of being, and not to feel tension that it's something that you need to learn, that it really is just a way of thinking, a lifestyle that opens us up to the possibility of just appreciating the fullness of our humanity, of who we are, and expressing that in a way of being and in our actions, and that just wanted to articulate that for any new listeners of yours, because often you can talk about mindfulness and people think you have to sit on a cushion and meditate for an hour, and that scares anyone off as a beginner.
Exactly. That comes up quite frequently, that we have people, even those who've been part of a practice for a long time, who find mindfulness and meditation practice to often be constricting instead of lightening, instead of it gently resting the mind's attention in one place or opening up the awareness. They take that word concentration and use it in the squish into a tight tenth of the ball sense. And
You're so right.
Of course it makes things not quite so enjoyable, which turns them off a bit. And there's, as you were saying, there's no reason to start with an hour in full lotus. That's going to be probably unpleasant for most people as a start. You can begin very simply by just walking the dog, instead of thinking about, as I was doing today when I was walking our older dog tonight, thinking about things at work, instead of focusing on this pleasant walk and my very sweet old dog and the wonderful, beautiful day that was in front of me, and being mindfully present in this very moment.
Yeah. You said it so articulately. It's amazing to think that there's a multiplicity of ways to be mindful, and it starts with just paying attention and using the breath to calm the mind and the heart. And it can move into so many different layers, whether it's meditation or Tai Chi or yoga or art or journaling. I mean, it can be so individual, and it can be so creative. And that's what's inspired me on my journey, really, that I've been able to enjoy the expansiveness of a contemplative practice that's just doesn't start and end with meditation, but it includes so many other facets.
Exactly. And also something else we're enjoying, thanks to Theo, for folks who pay attention when I say so, sit back, relax, and have a drink. The rose tea was Theo's idea tonight, so thank you for that suggestion as well.
You're so welcome.
And thank you so much for being here. Theo Koffler, founder and senior teacher at Between Four Eyes, which will be evolving into Mindfulness Without Borders. But you can certainly join the online community now. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the companion website at www.thesecularbuddhist.com, and you'll find an entire web page devoted to this and every episode. There are also links to discussions about today's topic on the Secular Buddhist Facebook fan page. The music for the Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizan Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are linked on the Secular Buddhist on the About Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on the Secular Buddhist.